Hey guys, and welcome back to the Natty Scene. We are on episode 8 today, and we are joined by Grace Jones, who you will probably know as one of my clients from this year, 2019. It's already 2020. So obviously we had a very successful year with Grace, and also we wanted to get a female on the podcast and a fellow natural female as well. And there's not a huge amount. There are a few, definitely, but I think there's slightly more males that share their journey online, especially throughout the off season, than there are females. And perhaps we'll discuss that topic with Grace in this podcast itself. George isn't here. George is scared of Grace. He thinks it's much bigger than him. It's just me and Grace today. So we're going to basically run through some of my own questions for Grace and her prep, and ones of which I think will help you guys to get to know Grace a little bit more, where she's from, what her background is, what got her into competing, etc. And then we'll also move into some of your guys' questions, which you asked on Instagram, which delve into a little bit more of, a little bit of personal feedback for people that are maybe doing their first shows and looking to compete. And I think definitely from working with Grace, this may sound like I'm blowing smoke, but you can definitely learn something and learn a lot from Grace, because for a first prep, she did immensely well. Like, there's very, very few people that can do as well as this in their first prep. And that actually should maybe be a little bit of a headline of the podcast, is that, you know, set your goals fucking high, but it is a rare occurrence that a first time competitor does as well as Grace has done in the first season. So without further ado, let's just sort of start with the basics, Grace. So give us a little bit of like just a chat about who you are, what you do on a day-to-day basis, how old are you, just sort of like the basics so people understand a little bit more about yourself.
Cool. Are you really making me say my age? I feel old now. If I remember it. I'm 28. Okay. I really don't feel 28, honestly. I feel like a teenager in my head still, but yeah, I'm getting on now. It's close to 30. So I realize next time I compete, I'm going to be 30, which is absolutely terrifying. But yeah. My name is Grace Jones. I am 28. I'm a personal trainer and online coach, working out of Empowered Fit Gym, which is on the Wirral, which is close to Liverpool, if no one knows, because a lot of people don't. I'm about 2 months into a long off season following, as you said, my first competitive season.
Yep.
Where I came first in both my qualifiers within the UKDFBA and the BMBF, which was in the figure category. We also did fit body within UKDFBA, just because we weren't sure sort of where I was going to sit. I think it was the first year that they did the two. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So we just kind of had to just test the waters to see where I fell. I came third in that, so that wasn't too bad, but it was definitely figure for me. Then I went on to come second in the BMBF British finals, and then I won the UKDFBA British finals after that, and then continued on to the Worlds in New York, where I came third. So it was pretty cool. I never sort of saw myself getting to Worlds. I sort of took it in my stride and like just looked at the small goals rather than the bigger ones, but it's definitely something that I did think about and something I wanted to do. But I just sort of rolled with it, really. Sure. But yeah.
That's pretty much it in terms of where you're at. So cool. Thank you very much for that. In terms of what I wanted to sort of delve into stuff that I don't know about you. So when it comes to the start of your bodybuilding journey, so to speak,
yeah,
people tend to have some degree of like competitive background in some sport that drives them into wanting to get on stage, because maybe they're in the gym for other specific reasons and they find they can compete on stage as well. So for you, what really got you into weight training initially, and then as a result of that, what took you from just training with weights to then wanting to step on stage?
Right, so I've always done sports, always. I was a competitive swimmer when I was younger, which is why I think I've got broader shoulders, and why I hated my legs, because they were so small in comparison. But I always took part in a lot of sports. I did distance running, pretty much any sport that you can think of. So I've always done it. I've always been into fitness. And this is where you test my memory here. I think I started training when I was about 21. It was at a time. So basically, I don't know if you know this, I grew up in Spain. So I lived there from when I was 9 till probably, I think I moved back 4 years ago permanently.
Okay.
So I did try and come back to England multiple times. And I started weight training one time when I had moved back to England. I was here for about 4 months. I wasn't working. I was sort of stuck indoors, nothing to do, just basically getting fat off sausage rolls. And I don't know, I don't know what it was that got me into specifically wanting to go to the gym. I remember I got, like, basically when I get into something, I get very obsessive with it. And I remember just binge watching YouTube videos. It was a woman called Flavia Delamonte, I think her name was, and she was prepping for like a photo shoot or something. And I just binge watched her videos and I was like, I want to do this. I only joined like a little council gym. It didn't even have a barbell. I think it had like a leg extension, a horizontal press, leg curl. It was really minimal. But I just got obsessed from then, and just, I think I trained for about 6 months. I moved back to Spain, continued training there, and then life just sort of got in the way. And it wasn't for another sort of 3.5 years that I didn't train again, in which this is when I moved back to England again. And again, I just got dead obsessed with it, watching loads of YouTube videos, taking in as much information as I could. At this point, this is when I learned about flexible dieting. And I don't actually know where it was that I saw, like, it was a bikini competitor that I must have seen, because that's what I wanted to do originally.
Yeah.
And I don't know where it was that I saw this, but it was just something that I thought that would be really cool to do one day. I'd love the challenge of that. I'd love to see if I could get to that state of sort of leanness, what I'd look like. But it wasn't something that I was like, right, by this, I'm going to do that. I just trained because I enjoyed it. Sure. That was the main reason I did it, and because I wanted to just change my shape, grow my legs. So I've always trained out of the enjoyment of it. I never like, until I started coaching with yourself, I never logged my lifts or anything. I just did it because I enjoyed it, and that was it. And then I don't know what it was. I think I was chatting to one of the guys in the gym that I work with, because he was wanting to compete as well. Yeah. And we just sort of decided that it was probably, it would probably be easier if we did it at a similar time, so we could offer one another support. And just after a few chats, we both decided that we were going to approach coaches to sort of lead us from there. And it so happened that he did an earlier show, so he actually competed with in May. Okay. So he didn't do much of an off season with his coach, but obviously I was quite happy to do whatever you told me to do, and that was take a bit of a longer off season, and then do the later shows. So that's sort of how it came about, really.
Yeah, perfect. I think one thing that, listeners should take from that is definitely the fact that, there's a lot of young girls that like look up to you. I know there is, because I get messages, and I got messages over show weekends off a lot of like 18, 19-year-olds like, fuck, I wish I could look like Grace. I wish I could look like that. And I think sort of the message there to them is that, you started weight training and relatively inconsistently at 21 years old, and then on and off came back to it. And so, them starting at 17, 18, 19 is going to see them in a position where if they were to compete at your age, 27, 28 years old, they would have, huge foundations, especially with the level of knowledge that they'll be learning by following you, following the podcast, etc. So, and also the really big thing there, which I always, preach to people, is the fact that you were just training out of pure enjoyment first. You found your passion for the weights room before you started, restricting yourself for calories, getting yourself down to stage condition, and almost like losing your love of something that you hadn't quite built love for anyway, which we will touch on in a little bit about one of your most recent posts, where you really highlighted some of the things that are potentially negative aspects of bodybuilding prep, which is so important for people to realize, especially when they're so new to just even weight training. But yeah, so the next thing, you kind of answered it a little bit, but I wanted to touch on a little bit as to when you started coaching with myself, like what really drew you to the bikini class? What was the thing that was motivating you to sort of step on stage as a bikini athlete, or did you simply not know that figure existed at that point?
I wouldn't say it's more like what made me want to do bikini. It was what made me not want to do figure, which was basically like, I don't know. I know this probably goes this. Maybe people can relate to this. I don't know. So I said before, like I had broad shoulders, skinny legs. I've always felt like a bit more on the masculine side. So a big thing for me was growing my glutes, growing my legs to create that curvier shape.
Sure.
So to me, figure, with it being a bit more muscular, some of the poses put me off as well. It just seemed, which it totally doesn't now, not at all, but to someone who doesn't know a lot about competing, it seemed more masculine to me. And that just put me off because that wasn't the way that I wanted to go with my shape. And that is literally the main reason. But it's definitely not masculine. It really isn't.
No.
Not at all. So I think it was that. That's the only thing that sort of stopped me from wanting to go up to figure. But the thing that put me off bikinis, to be honest, is it's quite glam, isn't it? Like, I'm not the most girly of girls. And with all the hair flicks and stuff, like, I don't think I could have pulled off that sass. Definitely not.
We struggled with your T-walk anyway. So, like, the whole bikini style posing where you do have to, you know, have that sass and that glam, like, it would have been a little bit, it just wouldn't have been you. I remember at the, I think it was it was the first like bikini event you would have seen. It was the UKDFBA Northern.
Yeah.
Your WhatsApp me from the audience saying, yeah, I shouldn't have done bikini.
I would have looked ridiculous up there.
You would have, because like obviously at that stage, you know, we were thinking between the figure and the fit body, and you ended up placing really well in both. And I think, you know, we definitely found where you land as a result of doing both. And if anyone's listening to this and thinking, you know, where do I land, figure or fit body? It seemed to be, as the season sort of unrolled, that the fit body girls were just a little harder in condition, a little more muscle density, and a little less focus on the shape, which of course was very suited to Grace in terms of the shape aspect. You know, when you're dieted down, your waist is very tiny and you have very good flow to the physique, which is what, you know, even in your initial check-ins, like when you were hitting the bikini poses, like I could see straight away that they weren't natural poses to you. Whereas I get some clients that, you know, they hook bikini poses and figure poses, and I really can't tell which is going to be the best until they diet down. But even in off-season shape, it was quite clear to see where you were going to land. So moving into like the prep itself and when it began and when it started, and a little bit before that as well, did you have sort of any fears or worries before starting the prep? Did you have any doubts? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people that are listening to this that are thinking of competing this year, and they maybe have fears or worries. And did you have any at all?
I probably was just worried that I wasn't going to look as good as I'd like to look. And I felt I had that anxiety and worry all the way through prep, because you always want more, don't you? And I'm definitely like my worst critique. So before prep, I was just sort of, because especially when you're in your off season, you don't know what you're going to look like. I've dieted down before, but not to those levels. But not any massive worries. I wasn't worried about how hard it was going to be. I was looking forward to that. Like I liked that. I thrive off that. It was more just how good I was going to be and if I was going to be good enough. And that's probably the only worry that I had, to be honest.
And for the people listening that are doubting themselves and their capabilities, how would you say you overcame that? Because obviously when you stepped on stage, you did incredibly well. How did you deal with it?
You know yourself that I was still disappointed with some of the outcomes though.
Yeah.
So I would say don't handle it in the same way I did. Like, try and remember like how far you've come. Like, even just by getting on stage, whether you win or not, that is a feat in itself. Like, getting yourself to stage condition is one hell of a feat.
Yeah.
So even if you don't place, you should be proud of yourself for that, which is something that it took me sort of a little while to take in and just sit down and go, yeah, you've done amazing here, regardless of the placing. And if you still feel those doubts, I guess just use them to fuel yourself to get better. Like that's what I would do. So the places that I'm not happy with, I want more next time, and I'm going to use them. I'm going to use them to push me harder, and that's it.
Yeah, and I think even like in your first check-in back from like the shows, I think I said to you how I was kind of not in one way not happy, but in one way happy that you didn't win everything, because I think I said to you, if you'd won everything, it would have been like your first season, you'd have gone from an amateur to potentially a pro, and it would have been done like that in a click of a second. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's incredible if you manage to do that. But at the same time, you don't learn what it's like to have to, lose before you win, and be able to sort of work your way up steadily. And, when you come back, you're going to be massively improved, as opposed to having to essentially step up to the pro ranks straight away, immediately compete in the States, and all of these other things that would have come as a result of getting that straight away. I think, experiencing that like myself, bodybuilding is a war on like delayed gratification. Like you just need to be very patient with everything you do. So I think for listeners, that I know so many people, like I've had inquiries saying, I want to be world champion. And I'm like, dude, you've not stepped on stage yet. Like you don't have a clue how you're going to look. It's all well and good setting super, super high goals. And I even said to you at the start, like the goal is to really like do well and win kind of thing. I think I said that to you. And I think, you didn't mention it because you hate me, but having a coach when you're doubting yourself is pretty important as well, because the amount of times you'd send me check-ins and you'd say, oh, I look like shit. I was always relatively honest, whilst also managing your like mood and expectations, because in the instance of like worlds where you were sending me check-ins and it wasn't the best circumstances, which we'll talk through in a second, it was hard to say, okay, you do definitely look worse. Without
which I did.
You basically emailing me saying fuck my plane ticket. So I was just trying to keep you on the fucking plane, basically. So yeah, it's like a mixture of in the coaching scenario, it's a mixture of honesty with getting the client into the right position to move forwards psychologically as well. So yeah, you kind of covered it also as well in the first discussion, but when you started prep, did you know about worlds at the end of the stage? Did you know that was a potential like opportunity, or did you just focus on each show, or did you have that envision of potentially getting to worlds?
I knew about it, and it was definitely something that I thought that would be amazing for sure. But the first step was the qualifiers, then it was the finals. It's just ticking those off and going ahead to it. And like the closer I got, the more I thought, yeah, this is actually possible. I think when I got so close on the BNBF final, I was like, I want to win the UKDFBA. I want to go to Worlds.
Tell me about it.
So I guess it was just the closer I got, the more real it seems, kind of thing.
Yeah. We've both been through that exact situation. Like in 2017, I came second at the BNBF and then won UKDFBA. And you feel as if when you see all the people like going off to Miami with the BNBF, and you're like, because you know that you potentially could have done that if you really wanted to. But I sort of said, stick to your guns and look towards UKDFBA. So it was very, very good that sort of when you got that, because I knew how badly you wanted it, and it pays off to sort of dig for those few extra weeks for the end goal. So one more topic on your prep. So one thing that I struggle with when I go into contest prep is the almost like the anxiety that you get or the worry in the evenings about like the next day and the task you've got to do, because it all becomes a little bit overwhelming. You suddenly go from what was an off season where you can be relatively relaxed with your intake. You don't necessarily have to prep every single meal, and you haven't got loads of steps to do or cardio, and you can sort of make your schedule fit a little bit more around your day. But when it's prep, it's like you've got to get the boxes ticked.
Mm-hmm.
How did you deal with your days, because they were extremely busy, and it came to a point where you're having to do quite a lot. So how did you manage that?
Hello.
Did you hear the end of my question?
No. Totally lost it.
I think that was my internet. So.
You just went, how did you?
So I'll rephrase the question. So I just went offline for some reason. So essentially what I was saying is, the end of the day, you have like lots of boxes to tick for the next day. And at some point you had a lot to do. You had a lot of cardio sessions to fit in, a decent amount of steps. How did you deal with, controlling almost like the nerves or the fear of like the next day ahead, and dealing with your extremely busy schedule?
I think just being organized massively. I think it was something that I just dealt with quite a lot throughout prep. The hardest part of prep for me, like for myself, was time management.
Yeah.
Obviously being a PT, your schedule is just, you're literally working the most unsocial hours.
Mm-hmm.
So that in itself is hard in the off season. So to fit everything around that, you have to be so organized. Like I'd have to plan my day pretty much the night before. I'd plan my day. I literally, you've seen my calendar. I had to schedule in when I was eating based on where my clients were.
Yeah.
I'd get up at 4 a.m, 4:30 to get my steps in, to do my cardio. It's literally like planning is key in my life. So that is what made me feel better, right? Like if I knew when I had to be wherever I had to be, that made me feel so much calmer. But if something got in the way of that, my stress would go through the roof. Like that caused me so much anxiety. If anything was changed from what I had in my head, like that's what caused me the most stress.
Yeah.
And in those cases, I just had to sort of take a minute and just like do what I could. And if it meant that I lost out on sleep because I had to get steps, then so be it. But like you said, you have to do them. You have to tick the boxes off.
Yeah. I remember it was even little things like if someone was on your Stairmaster, or if all the Stairmasters were taken.
How dare they? Do they not know I'm on prep? The rage.
Yeah, I think the suggestion for that is just get your own Stairmaster for home.
Yeah, so, I did have a treadmill, so.
Yeah. So no one gets on it. But yeah, so thank you for that answer. I think that's a good way to approach things for most people, is just to have, a plan of action, write out the times at which you're doing things. And, like for people that don't know, obviously Grace has like a pretty busy PT business, and she's, got hours all over the place in terms of scheduling clients. So it's a little harder than the relaxed online coach life. But it's still, for myself, it still comes down to having enough time to do everything, especially when the client intake is higher, or there's a busy week of peaking or something like that. It's going to be still a lot of, time management. Like even last year, it was a case of I was almost struggling to fit in a full session and get back to everyone from, peak weeks and things like that when it was really, really busy. But yeah, so time management, very, very key.
So is that something that when you go onto your prep, is that something that you're going to do? As in, like, are you minimizing your clientele so that you've got more time?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Like, I think the main thing that I've changed in terms of the roster that I've got this year is that I've taken on a lot more off-season clients. And when people are like, when it's a 50-50 decision on a prep, I'm pushing people to try and take more time off, not because I'm being a dickhead, but more because like I need to give the people that have stayed with me for a while and are considering what's the best year to compete, I'd rather give them like the best possible situation. So I think I'm going to have like almost half the amount of people that I had competing last year, this year. So it's just going to be a lot more manageable. But because competing is like the main thing that's going to take away the time and some of the focus and skew time management. But 2021 is, already with yourself competing is looking very busy, because everyone that pretty much was competing last year wants to do 2021. So, but it'll be good. It'll be a good year. That was a strong year. So I think also it'd be nice to, because you didn't ever really talk about it massively on your social media that much, because you didn't really discuss it at any point. But it was quite a difficult period in between the UKDFBA and the WNBF Worlds. And I remember obviously getting told by Lee that you'd got the invite, and provided that everything was going to be swimmingly smooth. And then I sort of told him the honest truth, and he put his trust in me, put his trust in you, and at the end we are happy with the result of the WNBF World. So
all things considering, yeah.
Yeah, all things considered, we were happy with the result. Yeah. So what actually happened between UKDFBA and WNBF? Take us through it a little bit.
So at the start of the year, I remember doing the check-in with you and telling you about this, and I was so nervous because I wanted you to say, oh yeah, we can do both, it's fine. So basically I applied for a charity trek with a charity called Copperfield, which is a charity that's really close to my heart and my family's heart. And they do a trek every year. My mum's done it, my sister's done it. It was my turn and I've been waiting for this. And so I applied for it. You never know if you're going to get it. It was to the Himalayas. And like I told you about it, and I said, there's a chance, and it'll be in November. Obviously at this point, we didn't know whether I'd get to World. So I'm not going to turn something down.
No. If
there's a chance that nothing would even get in the way of it. So I applied to it. I got accepted to it. And from then on, we just had to sort of go, let's see what happens. In all honesty, in the lead up to the UKDFBA, I think I was finding it so hard. I was pretty much 95% sure that regardless of the outcome, I was going to the Himalayas. Yeah. And at that point, I was like, I can't do both. I can't see how I would do both. So I think I was set on like finishing after the UKDFBA, even if I'd won. But literally, as soon as I did win, like I've written a post on this actually that will be posted. But the like sadness I felt when I won, because I knew I still had to make a decision, because I did want to go to Worlds. Like my mind changed straight away. So you know yourself, like that's all I wanted to know was like, what should I do? Can I do both? Which we could have done both. It could have gone better.
Yeah.
So obviously, I think it was 5 days after the UKDFBA, I went to the Himalayas. So I flew to India, to the Indian Himalayas.
In stage conditions.
In stage conditions, do 4 days of hiking. And with every good intention, like staying on track with food, training as much as I could. But unfortunately, some things are out of your control, and I got very ill. So I got a bacterial infection when I was there, and ended up pretty much in isolation for almost 3 days. Lost a shitload of muscle, in my opinion.
Yeah, you did, yeah.
Got a lot of water retention from it. I was there for, how long? 12 days, I think I was there for.
Yeah.
So I came back with 5 days until we flew to Worlds.
Yeah.
So within that time, so within that time, I was tracking my food to the best of my extent after getting ill. I was training body weight with bands, with like water bottles, like anything I could find, just trying to fatigue my muscles. And it didn't really work in my favor. It wasn't good. It wasn't good. I wonder if Lee knew how I was going to come back, what was going to happen if he would have changed his mind.
I don't know. When you arrived back, I just said, Grace has landed and she's alive. And he just gave me the thumbs up.
At least I didn't break a leg or something like that. It could have been worse.
That was the main concern, is that, you'd literally not be able to step on stage.
Yeah. So, I would have done it even if I'd broken a leg.
Just go on with crutches.
Yeah. So, but yeah, as a result of all of that, I brought my worst physique to the world stage, and we both agreed on that. And we both agreed that even if I'd looked better than, even if I'd looked better than the UKDFBA, I still wouldn't have won that show.
No. And you wouldn't have looked better than UKDFBA, in my opinion, because by that point in the diet, you were already starting to get a little worse anyway, because we'd already started to bring up calories, and we'd already tried, preserving muscle. At that point, it was a case of you'd just been dieting for too long. It tends to be, and this is like something that I'm really thinking about heavily in my prep, is like, it tends to be the the best looks are the looks a little earlier in the season when, you know, you've only done sort of 20, 24 weeks of dieting. When it starts to tick over a little bit over 30 weeks, the late 20s, this all naturals seem to sort of just start looking worse.
Yeah.
It's just a little too long to spend being lean and also in a dieted state.
Well, it was like my first show that you thought potentially was my best look, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Which was a show I wasn't even meant to do.
Yeah.
Because we were meant to do a show in September.
Yeah. I think the thing is that the difficulty is when you've got a first time competitor, I hadn't the foggiest where your best look was going to be.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what is your best. So it was a case of, and that's the thing you've got to do with all first timers really is keep on taking off body fat until you've got to the point where you've taken too much body fat off at the cost of muscle. And you can start to see that happening. Like we could start to compare your check-in photos and the front relax just started to look different like every time. Like the lats just looked a bit smaller. The shoulders looked like they had less pop. Even the quads started to look a little smaller.
Yeah.
So that's when we start sort of new. And then for next time, you know, we know where your best look is. And it'll be a case of once you hit that, changing your mindset to, okay, you're going to maintain this look as opposed to, you know, trying to get lighter on the scale. And
that'll be hard.
Yeah, very difficult, very difficult. Because trust me, I'm going to have that same problem myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not chasing just a number on the scale, but chasing, you know, the best actually aesthetic look on stage. So yeah, that was cool explaining that. I think some people will probably be quite surprised by that and be shocked as to what actually happened because I don't think many people know.
Well, when I tell people about how it was my worst look, you know, people are nice, aren't they? They're like, no, you looked amazing. I'm like, no, I looked shit. Yes. I looked horrendous in comparison, in my opinion. But
yeah, agreed.
It's frustrating because I think it's even more disappointing because it was out of my control. At least like if it was my fault, I could blame myself. And
yeah, 100%. But like you said, you know, you wouldn't have wanted to step on the world stage and having not done the trek because that would have been equally as like horrible to feel that kind of emotion, when you should have done the trek. So,
I wouldn't change it.
No.
Maybe just not get the shits, but
yes, the shits would be something that we don't want to get next time.
No, thank you.
Cool. So I'm going to roll through the questions. I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover over the course of your prep, and I think that gives people a decent insight into things. So we'll cover some of these questions. Some of them are pretty good. Some of them are questions that I'd actually would have asked you anyway, but we'll roll through them. So first one, this actually comes in, just to let you know, so you're aware of how many people maybe want you to do this.
Right.
This question has been asked 4 times.
Okay.
So it's from Megan, Caitlin, and a few other people. But the question is, are you ever going to consider going down the IFBB route and potentially going down what would ultimately be a little bit of assistance to get you down to, you know, potentially IFBB pro figure? Is that within your scope? Is that within your goals? What do you think?
At this moment in time, no. Like, if you could do it naturally, that would be incredible. Like, I'm very much a person that's like, never say never. Like, just take things in your stride and see what happens. But at this moment in time, like, I know this isn't the case, but for me personally, I feel like I'm cheating myself doing that. Okay. I want to see what I can get to naturally. I want to push myself to the limit naturally rather than doing that. Yeah. And that would be enough to put me off of it, off of going down that route. If you could do it naturally, then definitely, but not assisted. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I think, you know, now knowing a little bit more about your background and like how long legit you have been training and how long you did like a proper off season as well with myself and how much you grew in. Yeah, exactly. How much you grew in that phase and how much you're growing now. I think it really means that you've got a lot of growing left to do. And I agree. That's pretty exciting. In all honesty, I don't know whether that will take you to a point where you could step on stage and look comparable to people who are getting IFBB pro cards. I don't think so. I think the balance of like the hardness and condition that you'd need to get there would be something that would just have to be fueled by some assistance.
Yeah.
But like you said, never say never, but at the same time, the health ramifications and things like that, just sometimes for some people too off-putting. It's the same thing for me, really. Like, I just don't want to go down that route for multitude of reasons, but one of them being health and just longevity. Like, I would like to actually live for quite a while, to be honest. And I'm not sure just getting an IFBB Pro card is enough to take several years off my life. But George, if he was here, he lives with the philosophy of, if you're going to have a life, whatever length it is, you better just fucking have fun and do whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, fair play.
Have fun naturally.
Yeah. I mean, George has got so many tattoos that I don't know how they'll look when he's 80.
Hey.
You're gonna point that out. That was just me trying to convince you to go down the route. All right, so next question. Have you got any tips for a first time? This is from Zena. This is one of Danny's clients, and she's doing figure this year. Do you know her on Instagram?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. She's got really good potential.
She looks amazing.
Yeah.
She looks amazing.
She's
she's someone that would worry me. If I was going to get up against her, I'd be worried.
She'll appreciate that, I think. But yeah, any tips for her competing first time?
If I could have gone to more shows before I competed, I definitely would have. So if you can, go to some shows and see them. But the best thing I ever did was contacting you and doing more of an off season before going into it.
Yeah. Doing with Danny.
Like, I'm happy with what I brought to the stage, but the more time I could have spent in the off season, the better, really. Yeah. So I think that's literally the best thing you can do. Like, if you've got the time, if you need to, just take the time to build up a shape that you'll be happy with, and you'll be more competitive then. Rather than potentially going in, not looking anywhere near as good as you could look, getting a shit result and being put off it completely. Yeah. Because we all want to win, don't we? I think it's bullshit when people say they don't want to win. Like, why are you doing it? You want to win, that's it. So yeah, don't sugarcoat it. So yeah, just spend a bit more time in the off season, practice your posing. I think practice, like, just look at yourself, like, get comfortable with looking at yourself. I think that's something that I say even to my clients, like, that have issues with their body and stuff. Just get confident with the way you look. I would say that.
Cool. Yeah, I think Zena will be doing well this year.
Yeah,
I'm gonna put my money on that. So she also asks, what's your next plans? So what's next for you in terms of competing? What's your plans now?
So I'm taking this entire year as an off season.
Yeah.
Just grow in every way possible. I also want to focus on my business, so I really need, like, just a bit of a clearer head, which I'm just about getting back. So we're looking at competing next year, so 2021, definitely within the UKDFBA again. I imagine I'll probably do the Northern. We've spoken about PCA because I just think it would be fun to do, like, a proper routine. I think it looks fun, but my main goals are within the UKDFBA, getting back on the world stage again and hopefully winning, taking the pro card. So that's what's in my head at the moment. That is the main thing. PCA is just for fun.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, the thing with PCA is that it's kind of very similar standard in toned figure compared to all the natural feds. So obviously, whilst, you could be on assistance, you don't really want to be on assistance for the toned figure category because you just look potentially too hard or too muscular. Yeah. So, like, toned figure, if you are a natural figure girl, is probably a really good place to compete as well if you want to rack up shows.
Yeah.
Like Holly Gallagher did. I think she probably did the most shows ever done in a figure prep. she was at every damn federation.
I think if the PCA show got in the way of the UKDFBA, though, I wouldn't do it. If anything was to get in the way, it wouldn't be an option.
Yeah, I think, it'd be a consideration just to sort of get more experience, get on stage again, practice a peak week kind of thing, but not as a dedicated show. And that's, obviously, as I've said on the podcast before, it's, the reason why I'm focusing purely on UKDFBA is that, my goals reside within that federation. So yeah, cool. Okay. Someone says, Max Sinclair says, no question, just that he takes as much inspiration from any other male bodybuilder as he does from you. So
thank you.
Inspiration, Chris.
That's cool.
Okay. In terms of the last prep, Edgar asks, is there one thing or any other things that you would do differently the last prep and your next prep?
Yeah, so this is something that I posted about yesterday. So with regards to the effort that I put in and stuff, I wouldn't change it. With regards to the effort that I put into my prep, I wouldn't change it because I gave it everything.
Sure.
What I would change is what I gave to other people and how I was. So this is something that I touched on in my post, saying that I sort of, like we all know it's a selfish sport, don't we? But I do not believe that you could do better, can't you? Like I could definitely do better. I could be less selfish than I was on prep, as in just making a bit more time for other people. So during my prep, obviously you're tired, you're hungry. I became really introverted. Literally, people used to laugh at me at work because I'd basically sit in the staff room, sat on top of the fridge, eating my meal in silence, just because that is the best part of your day, is when you're eating. You don't want to be interrupted. But what I failed to realize is that all these people are worried about me. They're worried about why I'm doing that. They maybe don't understand it to the same extent. They aren't getting anything out of this. Like, I'm getting something at the end of this. Say, for, like, my boyfriend isn't getting anything out of this at the end of it. Yeah. And I need to consider that and just sort of something that next prep, something that I'm definitely going to do is just make more time for other people and just be a bit more conscious of how my prep and my actions are affecting others. And like I said in my post, I've got a few ideas of what I'm going to do to make that happen, like switching off sort of mobile phones and stuff overnight so you can just be a bit more present, like actually planning stuff to do so you definitely make the time to spend with them. So just stuff like that. That's the main thing that I changed. But with regards to the effort that I put in, nothing.
Yeah, agreed with that. I think that's a like a huge take home. You'll learn in your first prep how introverted you do become, and it is scary. And you'll unfortunately, it's not something massively you can coach, because you've got to feel it and you've got to realize that you're doing it to be able to fix it. Because some people react in different ways. Some people are forced to be extroverted with their social life or their job or whatever, and they almost like stay within that cycle quite naturally. But when you have the degree of flexibility in terms of your human contact, like you do choose to be more introverted. Like I've done that in all of my preps, to be honest. I can quite honestly say that in all of my preps, I've spent a lot less time with my family, and all of my preps, I've not had a girlfriend. So this one's got to be different. I've got to be able to spend time and, make time for people. I've got, a bigger business. I've got a relationship and I've got a dog, all of these things need to be maintained. But yeah, and that's why I think, off that topic is I'm not really a massive fan of people competing back-to-back years consistently, because I think you fail to even realize what you're doing until you're 3 years, 4 years down the line. You're like, shit, all I've got is bodybuilding and a few trophies, and I'm pushing all these people out of my life. So
that's it. And at the end of the day, they are the more important thing, really. They are, unless they're not. And then, but you don't, like, it's taken me probably 2 months to actually like clear my head to see that. Like if you asked me that a week after the show, and it's something that I said to people, I was like, I haven't done anything wrong. Like I've been prepping. That's it. That's the reason I've been like this. I've not done nothing wrong. I don't understand your point. But 2 months down the line, where I'm thinking a bit clearer, I totally understand it. And if it came down to prep or say my relationship, I would choose my relationship now. Whereas if you asked me that a week after, I probably wouldn't have. And that's just what, unfortunately, that's the way your head goes when you're on prep. But it's irrational, isn't it? It's not normal. So I think a big thing that could help in those sort of scenarios when you're on prep is communication from others, though. Like if I had more sort of people telling me that that's how they were feeling, it might have helped as well. So it's not all down to you at the end of the day. Like you need some give and take, and just like if you are in a relationship, for example, make sure you sort of set up some not boundaries, set up some like rules
Yes.
and plans, and like, again, like we shut off technology at 8 o'clock, like set up some rules beforehand, and also make sure you communicate with one another, because you'd realize what you're doing potentially.
Yeah, 100%. No, I think that's a superb message. And yeah, I mean, George would, if he was here as well, he'd totally agree. He split up with his partner during his prep and got back with her afterwards, after he realized that it was a mistake that he made and that he was pushing people away. And it's even like when we spoke to Ben, who's a more experienced competitor, a family man, he's got kids. You'd expect these people to like know it inside out, but even he was eating all of his meals in a room and on his own. It is crazy. And I think there is some give and take. Sometimes you'll have to do those things to get yourself towards your goal. And I imagine that's the same with a lot of other athletes. Like, to get towards what is a very selfish goal, at some point you do have to be selfish, and some of your selfless actions have to be done later on. But as long as you're not, basically bringing down your entire life with your bodybuilding prep, you just need to be aware of these things.
Yeah.
But that's super cool. So yeah, I think the final thing that I wanted to discuss before we sort of end things is, how did you find the post-show period away from your shows, finishing November, starting your diet relatively early in 2019? You were dieting down for a long time. How did you find sort of the post-show transition in terms of gaining body weight and changes to your physique? Like, how did you find it? Because I know from watching you deal with it, there's been some pros and cons in the way that we've run through this phase.
I think, right. So how much have I gained? What, 27 pounds? Like that. So from the lowest weight I was in prep to now, about 27 pounds. And like the worst thing about post show at the moment for me is hunger. Like I'm hungry. And I said this during the check-in. Obviously when you're hungry on prep, you're doing it for a reason. You're working towards something, and there's what did I say to you? There's no cake at the end of the tunnel at the moment. Like I think it's probably, the hunger is harder now, because there's a little part of you that's like, well, why don't you just eat a fucking bowl of cereal? Who cares? Sure. Like, and I think that makes it harder for me, because I don't mind being heavier. I really don't. Like it, the way I look, like obviously I'd want to look better, but it doesn't bother me really. I'm quite comfortable. The only reason it bothers me is because I know it's not optimal. And that is the main reason it bothers me. And I know if I maybe had have tidied it up a little bit sooner, my calories could be higher by now, and I could be eating the food that I want to eat. But all in all, like, not too bad. I think, like I've said earlier, it took me about 2 months up until now to really be back to my usual self. I'd say, like, functioning as a normal human being and thinking straight, and basically my hormones sort of going back to normal again.
Yeah, I think that was one of the pros, is that you definitely got, regular menstrual cycle. All of those things back into, basically perfect place very quick comparative to a lot of people. So.
And also my training has been amazing.
Oh yeah.
So it's just nice to see logbook numbers going up, and that's obviously down to being heavier and having more food in my system. So all in all, I don't think it's been too bad. I think it helped that it was like Christmas time and there was stuff going on, and I've got things going on in my life that I'm looking forward to. So I think definitely having something sort of in the works helps, as opposed to having nothing and just finishing and being like, oh, what now? So not too bad really.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you've handled it really well. Like I can tell when people are not handling, like they're gaining the weight, fairly rapidly, and they're not handling it well, and they don't, they really don't like it. I can tell that something's, bad's going to happen, or they're going to want to diet really quick, or they're not focusing on the positives like the gym performance, or, the health coming back hormonally, brain function, all of these things that are good. But I think you've done a really good job in terms of focusing on all the positives. and allowing those to take over the fact that, yeah, okay, cool, you're a bit softer. Like that's pretty much one of the only cons, is that you've gained weight, you know, maybe a little faster than we would have liked, but weight is weight, and, you know, having a better life and better training and all of these things far outweighs a little bit of body weight that can come off quite easily. So, so yeah, all good. Cool. So like final thing I wanted to finish on was, basically if people are interested in terms of like just asking you questions or contacting you in general, where's the best place for them to go? Is it Instagram or?
Yeah, I'd probably say Instagram. So I changed my name to it, to my full name, which is Grace Olivia Jones _. So just drop me a message on there. Any questions, I'm more than happy to help. Literally, I'll answer anything. Yeah.
Brilliant. And I know that you're building your online side of your business a little bit. So there's a lot of people listening to this that would be like fit in the online coaching niche. So I know that at the moment, are you looking in the future to potentially coach competitors or people in their off seasons, at least, especially like just muscle gain in their off season?
Yeah.
Is that something you want to do?
I would love to do that. I really would love to do that. I think definitely with regards to taking someone to the stage, that's something that I still need to learn quite a lot about, but it's definitely something that I see myself doing in the future.
Cool.
So that would be awesome. Yeah. That would be really cool.
Yeah. But for now, if like someone literally has the goal of muscle gain, you can definitely help them out. For sure. Yeah. Cool. Wicked. So yeah, guys, make sure that you, if you're not already following Grace, that you do, and keep following her journey to, you know, 2021 now from a stage sort of side of things, and obviously follow her business and watch that grow, because I'm sure that's going to be pretty cool to follow over the next years. And yeah, I think that's about it for this episode, guys. So thanks very much for listening.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for Grace for coming on, giving us some time. And George will be back next time, I hope, and we will speak soon. All right, guys, see you in a bit. Bye.